Sorry.
Hey everybody, what is going on? It's your boy Crypto Bobby. I hope you are having a great day, great night, wherever you are watching or listening in from. Apologies for the delay, but really excited for this is the second time we're doing this. Really excited for an episode here of AirSwap Next. And there have been a ton of really exciting developments in the decentralized finance space, the DeFi space in the Ethereum ecosystem. And specifically with AirSwap, there's been a lot of new product and platform protocol level developments. And over the course of the next 45 minutes to an hour or so, just want to take some time to review those with you and the rest of the team that I have from AirSwap right now that's joining. There's a bunch of different things. They've been shipping a ton on the...
We're not live.
No good.
Are we? I'm pretty sure we're live, guys.
He's pretty sure that we're live.
The comments on the chat are still saying that it's not working.
It's on a different video link.
The new link doesn't link to the right place then, I don't think.
Link don't work. Great. What is happening? Yeah, we have 5 people watching on a different link. Wonderful.
Hi.
Waiting on the old one.
Give me 1 second.
The official link is live now? Yeah, I think you noticed that.
Yeah, we're good. We got 23 people on. Sorry about that, folks. Apologies. I will put apologies in a couple different ends. Here's a new link. Yeah, we're good. We got 23 people on. Sorry about that, folks. Apologies. I will put So, sorry for the mix-up. That was completely my bad. Sorry for the mix-up. There was there's 2 different versions of YouTube streaming, and I messed up both of them, apparently. But to summarize things with what we're doing today, so wanted to hop into an episode of AirSwap Next. And we've done this, like I said, in the past before, and it is something that I think, every time there's a number of significant updates to AirSwap, it helps to talk a little bit about what those updates and those platform level updates for you are and how you can best utilize them. So over the course of the next 45 minutes to an hour or so, kind of dive through those. Both on the technical side, from the development standpoint, there's a big update to the smart contract with the Swap V2. There's a new tool that I think a lot of you guys are going to love called the Swap Trader, which is essentially trustless OTC transactions for ERC20 type tokens, the AirSwap.js liquidity module, and the Fluidity tap. So a lot of things to jump into today, and apologies again for the delay, technically speaking, on my end, but a ton of really good content to cover, really starting with the protocol. So I'll kick it over to you, Don, and Deepa, and Ethan, and Alice to talk a little bit about some of the protocols behind AirSwap and what they mean and how people can utilize them.
Sure, thanks, Rob. First, to just introduce myself, I'm Don. I'm a co-founder here with Deepa and Ethan, and Alice is joining us from afar. At the Fluidity Summit, we talked about some of the new things that were happening at AirSwap and some of the intentions we had around new forms of liquidity, doing more on-chain work. And today we released basically a suite of smart contracts that comprises the new protocols. And that includes a new swap contract, a new indexer contract, and some on-chain peer contracts. And so let me step through how some of that looks, and we'll start with the original pure protocol. So with the swap protocol that we released as a white paper over 2 years ago, it's very simple. It's between a maker and a taker. The taker requests a price for a trade from the maker prices it, returns it to the taker, and the taker has the option of filling it on the smart contract. And so there's the maker and taker are both peers, and the contract is an Ethereum smart contract. With the new AirSwap protocols, we have some new features, including new token types. So we've traditionally supported ERC20. We now support ERC721 for NFTs, and there's a path to supporting more. New signature types, including the standard way to sign using a wallet, and also a new way to sign that makes it much more clear what you're signing when you do. More control and efficient cancels for makers. We can maybe talk more in detail about that later on. Something we call affiliates, who are third parties that are compensated for facilitating a trade. So, for example, between the maker and the taker, if there were a third party that actually connected them for the trade, the maker could compensate the affiliates.
Can you give an example of like what an affiliate like might be, like what type of person or thing that might be?
Yeah. So I mean, outside of the social sense, there's a very natural use case for this in applications that have users that wish to make trades, and the application is actually acting as a way to connect their end users to makers on the AirSwap network. So for providing that connectivity, the makers may compensate them as an application, as an affiliate.
Got it.
And also something called authorizations, where peers can authorize other peers to trade on their behalf. This is very powerful. It is not only the ability to delegate, to authorize other peers, like people or programs, to act on your behalf, but also to authorize other smart contracts. And so that means you can deploy a contract that you deploy with some rules that can trade on your behalf.
Does that provide somewhat of like if then that type functionality for a trader potentially, utilizing AirSwap with a smart contract?
Yeah, I think that's right to some degree. I think the initial version of it is very simple. You basically state up to what amount you'd like to trade and at what price. But because these are smart contracts, arbitrary logic can be programmed into them, and they can also integrate with other on-chain liquidity sources. So we think the potential is really very high for the authorization features. So that's in the swap contract, and that's the basic peer protocol. But what we envisioned with the original swap protocol was a need to discover other peers. And so that was the introduction of the indexer. And the indexer protocol is where one peer, in this case the taker, can ask the indexer who is trading what, and the indexer will return one or zero or many makers that they can talk to peer-to-peer. Now, this has existed since the beginning of AirSwap, and we've been building products around this protocol for years now. But what we're doing and what we've released today is the contract has been on chain. That's been the swap contract that lives on Ethereum. But now we have the ability for a taker or a peer that's taking that role and an indexer to be deployed on chain. And so effectively taking 2/3 of the roles of the off-chain protocols and giving people the ability to do it on chain. This is not at the exclusion of the existing off-chain trading. It's really bolstering it. So why go on chain? I think first it opens up the network for passive liquidity, so traders can participate without running maker software. So if their computers go down or there's some reason that it's complex to run, they don't have to worry about that. They can just step into a dApp that deploys a smart contract that runs their rules to trade. Second, for integration with decentralized finance at large. The swap protocol provides an atomic swap that we think is very useful throughout. And with the new forms of liquidity, we think can also just bolster the broader liquidity available throughout decentralized finance. Also, redundancy and immutability. So being able to bring these things on chain means that they run without interruption. It's totally transparent. The code is often verified, so you can see explicitly what code is running and when. And so with the new swap contract that is now in production today and actually behind the scenes on the new AirSwap Trader product, you can go onto Etherscan, see the code, see exactly what it's stepping through. So it's really cool. In the end, with the new protocols, we're bolstering the existing network with new on-chain discovery and liquidity capabilities. So this is an expansion, and between the integrations and liquidity and immutability, I think it's very powerful. We've spoken in the past about the long tail of token liquidity, where the head is higher liquidity tokens that are traded more quickly and have tighter spreads. Through the tail is maybe lower liquidity or lesser known tokens. So with the existing, really the existing makers that are automated on the platform, or on the network, sorry, you can only go so far. So online peers can make trades as quickly as you ask them. And so we really see this extending us through the long tail and being able to support basically the full spectrum of liquidity.
Got it.
To speak more about the new indexer and the way that we're thinking of that, I think Alice, if she's on the line, was going to jump on and talk through some things.
One quick question before we get to Allison. This might come up a little bit, but Colin had mentioned, can you translate this for the regular trader that just wants to, use their phone to trade on AirSwap or trade with AST? Does this affect anything? Does this affect much for the, let's say, average user who is just interested or typically been trading with AirSwap on their phone?
Yeah, so I think in everyday terminology, you can think of the ability to set limit orders and do partial fills. So a peer could be deployed on chain to trade as much as a certain amount at a certain price. And so on the front end, it's to this point, you're either doing automated OTC or manual OTC. Mm-hmm. But at this, with these features, you can actually set a price and an amount and walk away. So it just makes it much easier to participate for folks like him.
Got it. That's helpful. Turn it back over to you, Alice.
Awesome. So I think Don covered a bit of the intro to what I'm going to talk about there, but essentially how it currently works on AirSwap, or how it's been working in the past, is anyone who wants to trade sets an intent to trade, and that's just stored in a database off chain. And so that is hosted centrally by AirSwap. It still works perfectly well. We can't tamper with any trades or anything like that because it's all done in a decentralized way through the atomic swaps, but we hold the intents to trade in a database. And so what we're moving forward to is this decentralized indexer that Don was talking about. And what it allows is for the indexes to be transparent, decentralized. Anyone can host one. Anyone can see them all on Etherscan, and it's all implemented using smart contracts. So what an indexer contract will now let users do is they can set their intent to trade. They'll say the tokens that they want to trade. So they might say that they want to start trading DAI and USDC, and they can stake some number of AirSwap tokens for a place on that indexer. And so what that will do is when someone wants to trade and they say, I want to trade USDC for DAI, the indexer will then be queried for makers for that trade. And depending on how many tokens you've staked, you'll be prioritized somewhere in this list. And so if someone says, return me 10 possible makers, the indexer will be queried for those potential 10 makers to fill the order, and it will return the top 10 makers depending on the amount that they've staked. So that can then just all be done transparently on chain. What this then further allows for, which is even more exciting, which is what Don touched on a bit, is that instead of just having an account on chain using your wallet, you can start deploying smart contracts that you can delegate to trade on your behalf. So you could say, here's my smart contract, and I've told it that it can trade DAI for USDC as long as this amount of tokens are being traded and this is the rate that they're being traded for. Here are my tokens. This contract's allowed to fill orders for me. And then this can all start happening far more efficiently on chain without people having to get involved. So instead of just staking the intent to trade from your wallet, makers can start deploying these smart contracts. And then even further down the line, we can start to provide URLs using IPFS hashes. So people can then start providing endpoints instead of smart contracts, instead of wallets. And the possibilities are endless of different ways that we can start having makers on chain for these orders.
Awesome.
Does that all make sense?
Yeah, no, I think that definitely on my end makes sense. And looking at some of the updates right now, and Alice or anybody else could take this too, I think it seems like to me a lot of the concept around it is increasing the kind of the number of makers that can participate in the ecosystem, which will kind of overall increase the amount of liquidity within the network as well.
Yeah, and it will also allow, if trades can start happening automatically more easily, you could just set a contract to say that I want to trade this, and I'm happy to trade that for the next month, and you just don't have to get involved. The smart contract can just decide, as long as the trade meets your rules, to just trade on your behalf. So it immediately increases liquidity. The second someone else wants to trade against you, it'll trade, and you don't have to be anywhere near your computer or anything.
Awesome. That's great. And I guess maybe one last question there, just as far as things go, and maybe I think this might be for Ethan. But looking at just smart contract development in general and Solidity, there's been some kind of high profile issues in the past, and now there's this concept of smart contract insurance that's coming up with the amount of money that people are moving in the DeFi space. So smart contract development is pretty serious and really important, and I think the security of it seems to be like an underrated or kind of an underdiscussed topic in the industry. How do you personally, or just like how does the team kind of work to ensure that you're deploying really high quality code in the long run that will be secure?
Yeah, that's a good question. So we take security and testing kind of hand in hand. I'd like to kind of start off with the various layers of testing that we employ. So there's unit testing, and that's kind of the layer at the very bottom. And on top of that, we have integration testing and then end-to-end testing. And we ensure that we integrate this into our continuous deployment and continuous integration systems, where we test every commit on every branch. And so this ensures that the code is at a particular quality on a per commit level. But in addition to that, like, design also matters here. So we use compositional design patterns, such as dependency injection. And these make the code more modular and easier to test. And because of this, it allows us to mock the dependencies, which facilitates writing simpler tests. And since we're only focused on testing that particular contract, that component, it makes thinking about it generally simpler. We also do code coverage tools. We do all statement coverage, all branch coverage, and we ensure that it's easy to reason about the code in general. So like, few of the takeaways here would be that we ensure that there's absolute simplicity amongst the contract, and we have a complete testing through and through and understanding of the code. And we take, again, testing very seriously, but acknowledge that it's not a catch-all solution. So we also look for ways that people can use and abuse contracts. And this goes, again, with hand in hand with security and with auditing. So we ensure the contracts are safe to use as well.
Got it.
And kind of jumping on what Ethan mentioned, kind of with that security aspect, testing is only one part of how we look at security for our smart contracts. As mentioned, security is a first principle of ours. So smart contracts in general are designed to be more immutable, such that once you've deployed them on the main network, essentially anyone could use them if they wanted to, and you're not going to really update them ad hoc. And for our own smart contracts, we tend to not have any defined owner, so there's no real control that we have after we've deployed them. And because we want others who are going to build on top of our platform or build on top of our smart contracts to feel comfortable with them, we take the responsibility to test and review our smart contracts very seriously. So while working with our auditors, we've actually developed best practices in-house for our own smart contract security. This starts at the beginning of the development process. So we'll have a very clear life cycle, and as Ethan mentioned, constantly testing and constantly reevaluating everything we've written ensures that there's a routine for this observation, but also there's transparency across the entire team. So there's not really a single point of failure that might exist. And then as well as setting up a continuous deployment and integration system. So that's one way. The other way we look at things is that having a very set of clear invariants or properties that we want to ensure that our smart contracts will always uphold. So for the swap contract, if you guys are familiar with, it allows for the swapping of two different tokens. And so kind of one of the invariants that we have is that we never want that smart contract to ever hold customer tokens or customer funds, because we want to keep it non-custodial. And so irrespective of what any other party, any malicious or just random user might do in terms of calls or transactions, we want to ensure that that tokens can never get stuck, or it's always going to be an atomic swap. And so that's kind of one of the invariants that we try to test for and kind of reason about to prove to ourselves that before we do a deploy, that will stay or remain true. And then lastly, we take a look that smart contract lifecycle doesn't end after it's deployed. We're constantly monitoring the smart contracts, either from looking at like a block scanner or just kind of in our own in-house nodes, and ensuring that there's no unexpected behaviors. Doing this allows us to, one, like just be aware of what's going on with our smart contract, but two, also just see what are the different use cases and what are people being able to create from our actual code. And then the other thing is that Ethereum is a nascent technology and that there are upgrades to the Ethereum blockchain. And so kind of being cognizant and just always monitoring what's going on ensures that if there is an upgrade that maybe might have a regression or cause some bug in our code, that we're just aware of it and make sure that we notify the community or notify anybody if there is going to be a change to our smart contracts, what that change is and why we're doing it. And I think that's one way to just be cognizant of that. We are in a nascent technology, but also kind of building with the technology.
For sure. Yeah, I think that makes a ton of sense. And looking at the technology as a whole, and kind of moving on to and the next step to the new product overview or some of the new product overview. Before we hop into that, Don, on your end, I know from the folks that are interested out there in this new index or rollout and what's happening there, can you dive into a little bit about what's next for these AirSwap protocols specifically, and how people, if they are developers and they are looking to build on top of this or kind of interact with AirSwap as a whole, how they can do so?
Yeah, absolutely. So today is when we published the repository in full, so it's up. Check the blog for some discussion on basically what we just covered. For any Solidity developers or DeFi fans, please join us on Discord. We're going to be hanging out there and talking about some of the new capabilities. As far as the rollout goes, I think the next step for us is going to be replacing the existing instant indexer with a smart contract, and then continuing to develop the on-chain pure system, and later just more sophisticated forms of that and the indexers. So we are open and ready to talk with anyone who's interested.
Awesome, I appreciate that, and I'm sure if everybody watching here does as well. And then as far as kind of the next step, I just reading some comments. I think some people that are maybe a little bit less technical in nature are probably more maybe interested in how they can kind of utilize things in the front end. So I think it's a really good transition now to hop into the product overview. And Gal, I think if you're somewhere over there, we'll kind of take it along to you at this point in time. And one of the things that I think that I've been really excited about and just keeping a close eye on is AirSwap actually just released a new product or kind of version of a product called the AirSwap Trader. Can you tell us a little bit more about this new product and how people can leverage it and utilize it?
Yeah, of course. Hey, Rob. Thanks for having us. Thanks for hosting this event. I'm Gal, product manager here at AirSwap, along with Chris, UX designer, and Sam, software engineer. So yeah, we just released a product earlier this week. But I think before doing a deep dive, I think it's important to understand how it fits within our broader line of products, and just like to see it in context. So in the past year and a half, we had 4 major product releases. Usually the user journey begins in DexIndex. DexIndex is a price discovery tool, an open source one, that allows users, traders, to find the best prices across DEXs. If the user indeed found that the best price is on AirSwap, he will be directed to AirSwap Instant. AirSwap Instant allows users, traders, to buy or sell ERC20 tokens instantly. So within 3 or 4 clicks, without losing custody of your funds and without paying trading fees, you can buy or sell ERC20 tokens. If traders are looking for a more sophisticated type of trading environment, they would head over to AirSwap Spaces. AirSwap Spaces allow a more conversational type of trading where OTC desks mostly, or professional traders can post intents to trade. Some of them are more long tail type of tokens, but in general, it's a great way to discover peer in an ASIC fashion. Now, this leads us back to AirSwap Trader. Now, to understand exactly what AirSwap Trader is, I think it's first important to understand the problems that it aims to solve. So in a very high level, it aims to solve the very same problems that all of our other products are aiming and successfully solving. There's the issue of custody, of course, when you're not losing the custody of your tokens. Here at AirSwap, we believe that if it's not your keys, it's not your coins. And everything is happening wallet to wallet. In addition, there's the trust element, of course. If you're about to execute a trade, you should feel confident that this is exactly the trade, and the trade will be executed in the agreed upon terms. Nothing more, nothing less. In addition, there is also the user experience aspect, right? We're dealing with very sophisticated technology, and we're working really, really hard to abstract all the complexities and provide a really simple, easy to use, and frictionless as possible user experience to the end user. So within 3 or 4 clicks, you can transact, you can interact with the Ethereum network. Now, those are the more top level problems that we're aiming to solve generally across our product line.
Gotcha.
There's also problems that we're solving specifically in AirSwap Trader. The first one was a problem that we solved with a different approach. We decided to take a more primitive type of approach to this product, or in other words, to create a product that will enable sophisticated trading behaviors and experiences, and will allow builders to build on top of it. So builders will have essentially a sort of a primitive that they will be able to take and reshape and really explore what it means to transact and trade in a decentralized fashion. In addition, we also explored the concept of shareability and peer discovery. In other words, and you'll see in a second where I'm going to do a quick product run through, users will be able to quickly create an order. In return of that order, they will be given a link, and that link can be shared with anyone, anywhere across the world. So if I mentioned AirSwap Spaces a few minutes ago, and if the experience in AirSwap Spaces is from the outside in, right? Traders are coming into the trading environment and are looking for peers within it. In the AirSwap Trader, the experience is from the inside out. Traders can create an order, get a link in return, and with that link, they can share it anywhere. So essentially, the world becomes your bulletin board. Now, without further ado, I think I can do a quick product rundown just to really describe and show how this product works and how simple it is.
Yeah, and just to point out too to everybody watching, I think one of the interesting things that this is really useful for, if you've ever done an OTC trade in crypto, or if you've ever kind of been trying to do some type of transaction, especially with somebody you didn't know and didn't trust, and you had, let's say you had ETH and somebody else had DAI, whatever it might be, and you had to trust somebody else to send that crypto first to you, or you had to trust them and sent them crypto to them. There's an element of trust. What the interesting and cool thing about this AirSwap Trader is that it removes that element, and it makes it essentially a trustless process where nobody can get scammed or kind of lose out on an element that they didn't anticipate. So that's, I think, something that's worth paying attention to.
Yes, exactly. So with this trustless escrow, essentially, when there's no middle party needed to ensure that the trade actually completes on the agreed upon terms, UI is very simple. Chris will take us through it momentarily, but I'm just going to build a trade, one that will not be necessarily favorable for myself, but the idea here is to show how this works. And then I will share the link to this trade for someone else to fill in the active chat box that we have as part of this live stream. So first, you just need to select the token. I'm gonna go and do select AST. I'm gonna input the amount. I'm gonna select the token I want to receive in return for this AST. As I said, it's gonna be a very favorable trade to whoever ends up taking it. I'm gonna just put one DAI. Now here, this is an interesting aspect. You can either specify a specific wallet address in case you know the counterparty that you want to fill the order, or you can leave it open in case you want to share it anywhere, whether it's within your trading group or you want to post it in a specific place. Now, in terms of expiration, you can decide when this order will end up expiring. And just for the fun of it, I'm gonna expire it within a day. Hopefully someone will take it beforehand. I'm gonna click create. It's gonna prompt me to connect my wallet. Of course, AirSwap supports multiple types of wallet. In this case, I'm gonna be using MetaMask. Wallet is connected. I'm gonna sign the order. I can review it. Click sign. And that is it. The order is, I can review the order and make sure this is exactly what I want to share. And here I have the share link, which I can click, copy, and I will share it momentarily in our group chat. And fairly simple.
Awesome. Yeah, that looks great. And I could definitely, you know, once as we turn it over to Chris, if you want to publish that into the chat box, and somebody out there wants to, you know, snag that trade, definitely go ahead. If you got MetaMask handy, just go through the process and see how it works for you. And if you do, let us know in the chat too, just how you like that process. Would be pretty cool to hear that. But Chris, would love to hear just your thoughts a little bit more on the, you know, design of AirSwap Trader and kind of the approach that you took to that.
Yeah, for sure. Yay, design time. So I guess to start, when we were getting into the design of AirSwap Trader, it wasn't the first time that we had been thinking about OTC. We had a pretty good idea of the kinds of elements that were going to go into play here, but the question was sort of, how are these things going to come together? And so right off the bat, we felt that the best way to approach this was to ask traders themselves. So all of our initial sketches, all of our initial wireframes, mockups, every single one of them, and there were a ton, were passed through the desk of our internal trader, Max, who you'll hear from, I think, a little later. And by the time we had totally exhausted him and he couldn't see another design, we went to Telegram, hunted down some OTC traders. They were incredibly generous and they gave us really pinpointed feedback. And if any of you are watching, thank you so much. And so what we're going to do is go into one of the designs where this kind of feedback was directly implemented. So this, which you just saw in the product walkthrough, is sort of the home screen. And one of the most important features here that we implemented was this price feature. Something that we observed and also heard verbatim from these traders that we were talking to was that these trades were not being communicated in an amount of a token and an amount of a token, but rather a token at a price that they are trying to buy or sell. So we thought this was a really unique addition. It's something that doesn't exist in other products on the market that are similar to this. And we really hope it'll be a powerful tool and really improve the workflow for these traders. Another small thing that you wouldn't think goes into the UX process, things just like, what order are you filling this form? So do you want to select your token first? Do you want to select the amount of your token first? And these were things that we were able to put in front of traders and be told exactly what they wanted. And it's here represented. And then the last thing, which is more overarching, but that we noticed from the get-go, was that to earn these users' trust, a trader really needed to know where they were at all times. They needed to know what part of the trade they were in, And there are a lot of different views of this product. There are a lot of different users using it, and each of them in every specific context needed to know where they were. So whether you're a maker who is building an order, a taker who has received a link and is opening an order, or if you're a random person out in the world and somehow see an open order posted to Twitter, all of those people need to be able to open it and know exactly where they are at all times and feel that they can trust to execute those orders. And I think just, overall, as far as our design, it was very much a dialogue with the people that we wanted it to work for.
That's awesome. Yeah, that's great to hear. Especially just taking into the feedback, the just response of different OTC traders, and I think that's ultimately what this product really looks and feels like it was built for, was a product that was essentially built by people that are transacting in these assets on a daily basis.
Good.
And as far as things go, just looking at this product as a whole, and some of maybe the technical constraints when it comes to designing on Ethereum, was there anything in particular that you had to design around from a technical constraint when it comes down to building a product like this?
Yes, for sure. And I'm sure a lot of people that are watching this now are familiar with the Ethereum ecosystem. Some of you may be builders or designers. And there are a few things that I just kind of call like the nuisances of using Ethereum products. So things like token approvals, wrapping and unwrapping ETH, wallet addresses that are totally indecipherable and don't resemble a human in the least. And these are not problems that were new for us. These have been ongoing and frankly kind of fun design challenges to keep getting around and trying to get better. So when it came to Trader, we had the fun opportunity to go back to the drawing board for some of these things. So when it came to what I kind of consider like the setup steps, so approvals, with wrapping, all of these kinds of things, we took an approach where we wanted to bake these steps into the greater flow. So as opposed to having the user have to take intentional moves to approve each of their tokens, instead we put it into the greater flow to create a seamless and guided experience. So here is an example of one of sort of the baked in modals that we have through our greater experience. There are also some kind of fun animations for when you're sitting and waiting for your transaction to approve. But we really felt like this was the most intuitive way that we could get our users through this.
Yeah.
And so, oh, yeah, no.
Oh, no.
So on the next point, which was the wallet address thing, and this is something that is talked about across the UX, Web3, Ethereum ecosystem, how can we help people with long, crazy looking wallet addresses? And so what we've come up with is actually a sort of a two-phase solution. The first of which is currently implemented in the product, and that is an inline verification. So if for whatever godforsaken reason you are typing in a wallet address, you'll at least have verification that it is in fact a real address, and it'll be read and you'll know that it's not if it's not. But this is really only half of what we're trying to get at, which, drum roll please everyone. Didn't get a drum roll, but thank you. We are soon to be implementing ENS support. So for all of you that have all of your cute little nicknames .eth and you've been waiting for somewhere to use it, you will soon be able to use it here. This is actually mine, so if you want to send some ETH over, that's fine. But yeah, overall, we're trying to improve our UX, and I think that we've taken a lot of good steps towards doing that.
Awesome. That's great to hear. And Sam, want to turn it over to you a little bit. I think you have some interesting commentary on a technical level about these products in particular, interacting with the swap protocol and IPFS. So would love to just understand how AirSwap Trader is different than AirSwap Instant, maybe on a technical level, because I feel like most people that are probably trading on AirSwap are most familiar with the instant kind of product.
Yeah, sure. So the way that Instant works under the hood is that when a user comes to the product, they build a request on the front end, to buy a certain amount or sell a certain amount of a token. The front end then queries the indexer for makers who are making orders in that pair, and then requests an order individually from each one of those makers, kind of summarizes the results in the checkout flow, and then the user has the choice to buy the best order or not. So there's a lot of steps happening under the hood. They're all automatic. To the end user, it basically feels instant, which, hence the name. On Trader, it's a very different process. So instead of the user requesting an order, they're making the order. That order is then stored on IPFS, and a hash which basically directs to that order is placed into the URL. When the user then shares that URL in social channels or with any counterparties that they hope to trade with, then their counterparties have an option to fill that order. So this results in two very different types of networks. The instant network is, you could see it as a bunch of nodes, which are kind of human takers on front ends, and then nodes which are automated makers running on servers, and then an indexer that kind of coordinates the communication of all these parties. And the timescale of the communication of that network happens, in seconds. The resultant network that we hope to see happen through Trader is much more emergent. You have different traders using the Trader platform as a tool to connect within their own social networks, their own social channels, and kind of networks of trading connecting organically over time through the product. And the kind of the storage of that network happens on IPFS.
Got it. Yeah, I think it's interesting from a technical perspective, and then from the user standpoint too. So I think, yeah, like I said before, guys, if you're watching right now, I would definitely check out the AirSwap Trader product, especially if you have a lot of peer-to-peer transactions with friends or in Telegram groups. It's a way to conduct those type of transactions in a trustless manner, and I think something that a lot of you will enjoy experimenting with and playing around with. And maybe as far as the next step of the conversation, we can talk a little bit about liquidity in particular, starting with Graham, who can talk a little bit more about how some of these updates have kind of helped to have enhanced liquidity within the AirSwap network as a whole. I'll wait for Graham to kind of navigate into the into the table. What's up, Sean?
How's it going?
Hello. I'm getting set up here. All right. Let me just share my screen real quick. Cool. So what we're going to talk about real briefly today is you heard about AirSwap Instant and then about AirSwap Trader, but we're going to kind of shift gears back to AirSwap Instant for a second and talk about the other side, which is not the side that you see when you browse to the website, but the side that actually serves those orders and provides that liquidity. And we get a lot of questions like, how can I be the one serving those orders? And we have a developer portal that we've done some work on this year to make it easier. And really, our latest tutorials have really just been trying to demonstrate how simple a maker can be. So you can have what we call a maker that serves orders. And if you look here in this diagram that we have on the top, we're really trying to demonstrate just how simple it is, the connection between traders over here on the right, who are on instant.airswap.io, and the makers, who you can quite literally just run a maker with a single file on your computer or on a virtual server if you want to deploy it there. Both of these parties connect to the network and then communicate, and we'll actually give a demonstration of that today. And now Sean will just briefly explain what these steps are and how they kind of work together.
Yeah, thanks. So on a high level, the interaction between a maker and a taker can be summarized into 4 steps. First, a trader requests an order through our AirSwap front-end instance, and then the maker receives that order as an intent to trade, and then processes that order. And this processing step can include things like checking the taker balance, setting a price, and setting the order. And Graham will go into more details and also show a demonstration of this maker flow. Yeah. And once the maker has completed processing this order, it will get sent back to the taker who requested it. And finally, the trader receives the order and fills it on AirSwap instance.
Right. And so when you're using AirSwap, as you probably know it at Instant AirSwap IO, you probably recognize this widget here, right? And so what's really cool is when you see this, like it's quite literally the exact data that's being sent from a maker to you specifically. And now we're going to kind of jump into that and see what it looks like. So first things first, the code that I have up here, we're not going to really like go through it line by line, but it is all available on our developers portal. And if you just come over here to the left to tutorial and then maker, you can download the same code that I'm using today and also get step-by-step instructions. And of course, if you want to jump into our developer Discord, we can help you out in person on there too. So we'd love to have you do that. So here I already have the maker running. And what it's going to do is it just coded to print out when we serve an order. So right here, you see this console log. If you're familiar with JavaScript, when an order is sent, we're just going to see it printed. So I'm going to come over to my Brave browser, and I'm going to request a quote. And you see 2 available here. So let's click on this. And interestingly, we see this one that's at a rate of 0.01. And if we come back to our maker, we'll see that the order was actually sent. So here is the data. And in our code, if we come up to our price trade function, you can see that we've actually just what we call hard-coded a price in here of 0.01. And so you can see the same price in the code being reflected over here on the UI. And yeah, that's just like a really dead simple demonstration of how simple it is to run a maker. There's actually very little code here, and you can download it today and try it out on our testnet if you like.
Yeah, I think it's definitely a useful kind of demonstration here, and something that I think a lot of people in the Telegram, and shout out to a couple of the people that are always in the AirSwap Telegram, Spike Siegel and a few others that have continually building and been looking for kind of some improvements. And I think these types of developer tools that Graham, you and Sean and the team have released are a pretty big step up for sure.
Right, and we definitely want to continue to improve these and make it easier for people. So if you're interested in building a maker and you go through these tutorials and you find something that was like a stumbling block, definitely join us in the Discord. We'll be happy to help you out there. Plan to release more tutorials and more like code sandbox links that my colleague Sam is really good at building to specifically solve your problems. And yeah, so that is a little bit of insight for a hobbyist or amateur maker who wants to get into it. And now we're going to turn it over to some of the pros with my colleague Maxime and our friends from Keyrock, who are professional liquidity providers. So
thanks a lot, Graham. Thanks a lot, Sean.
See ya.
Hey Rob, how are you doing?
Good.
How's your bag of Tezos doing?
I'm live, and Maxime is sending me a message in Slack saying that Tezos just went to $2. So I just want to say that I have to blame Max for making me laugh for like 1 second during this.
No problem. And we've got David who just joined.
Hey guys, how's it going?
Good. And so, you know, in this part of the conversation, especially for people that are trading pretty often, I think this is a portion of the conversation that you should enjoy. So Maxime works specifically with some of the liquidity providers, professional liquidity providers on the AirSwap network, and Keyrock is one of those organizations. And there's kind of a new AirSwap initiative with Keyrock, and Max, would love to turn it over to you to talk a little bit with David about kind of what Keyrock is doing and kind of how this all works in the back end for traders.
Absolutely. Yeah. First, thanks a lot, David, for being on the line at 11 p.m. in Belgium. So yeah,
in the office.
All good.
Keyrock is
working.
Yeah, no problem. Keyrock is a company that does market making on AirSwap. In 2019, we've pushed a strong partnership together to reduce the barrier of entry for new tokens to be tradable on AirSwap. So it'd be nice, David, if you can give a bit of an intro of yourself personally and Keyrock as a company. As I know, market makers, there's a lot of misconception in the industry about what you guys actually do.
Yeah, sure. So, I mean, what we do at Keyrock is really develop all kind of liquidity and market making technologies with the very specific objective of making them highly scalable. I mean, when we look at where the digital asset industry is going and what we want to accomplish with it is really about digitalization of assets. When you think about why do you tokenize something, it's because you want it to be liquid. So by definition, liquidity is the main value proposition of tokenization. To be able to accomplish that, what we realized at Keyrock was that scalability was the key factor for success in terms of this, because the industry in which we play today has a lot of different, I would say, hurdles towards liquidity, and therefore making it very easy to deploy and scale has been our main objective, and that's why we've been working with AirSwap on that matter.
I think we all know that in the industry, liquidity is definitely one of the main problems. How are you working and who exactly are you working with to solve this kind of issue? What's kind of like your clients in the industry and what tools do you deploy to solve those problems?
Yeah, correct. So I mean, like at Keyrock, we really work with all kind of companies. So we work directly with different cryptocurrency exchanges where we help them to tackle liquidity problems. We work as being dedicated market makers for different tokens in the industry, as well as with different brokers, such as is the partnership with AirSwap. With each of them, we tackle very different problems with different algorithms. In some cases, it's really all about how do we aggregate liquidity that is being fragmented in the industry. When an asset is being trading on a multitude of exchanges, how do we make it accessible on one endpoint? As well as how do we actually build a consistency and quality in the market. So whenever you have a market, an investor that is holding that token wants to make sure that at any given point in time, they have access to a fair spread and the capacity to liquidate that asset. And so that's really our job. Our job is how do we make sure that there is what you would consider to be a good market consistently through time.
And I think that's one thing too that just to note for everybody watching on the YouTube stream, there's this connotation or this kind of like image that people in the market have of market makers as this like big bad boogeyman behind the scenes that just makes causes all kind of haywire. And really, firms out there like Keyrock are the reason that you have tight spreads or tighter spreads on a lot of these assets and actual liquidity when trading them.
Yeah, absolutely. And so just to talk a bit more about what we did with AirSwap and Keyrock in 2019 is essentially we offered a service for any token teams to sign up and essentially offer free liquidity on the AirSwap platform for those tokens. It's a super easy process that you can sign up directly with Keyrock. The only requirements are for your tokens to already be on an exchange and to lend out some inventory to the Keyrock team. So I want to expand a bit on that and explain basically what's the real value added of signing up with someone like Keyrock rather than setting up your own market maker like you saw earlier with Graham. Keyrock, as a professional trading services, they are connected to about 20 to 30 exchanges at a time. So for example, let's say you're looking to buy a token like the BAT token or DAI. This token, you can buy it across 5-7 exchanges, but are you really going to go through the KYC process of every single platform and trading on every single exchange to get the best price possible? Not really. So that's something that Keyrock can do. They can aggregate the liquidity from all those different venues and serve those orders through the AirSwap platform where you don't need to sign up and you don't need to pay any fees. Juan, how's the initiative been taken by the public so far? Can you explain with us a bit on how many token projects have signed up and how it's going on your end so far?
Yeah, no, correct. It's been very interesting. So the initiative has started a couple of weeks ago. I think now it's 3 weeks or so that has been out there. Since then, we had something about 30 different applications, from which 10 of them are already either fully onboarded or onboarding process. So the process is going very smoothly. And the key for that is really understanding how can we actually make sure that the technology is deployable in a very short period of time. Especially when it comes down to it, liquidity in this industry really has a problem, which is that there is not a standard. Every exchange has a different API implementation. Every company is trying to innovate and do things in a very different way. So to be able to do something like this and really say, okay, we would allow anyone in the industry to contact us and really get listed on AirSwap. A lot of other steps had to be done, where we managed to already connect to a multitude of exchanges, harmonize the data, and make sure that the deployment of these liquidity algorithms is really something that can be done on one click.
Absolutely, yeah. I know you're a big fan of the AirSwap widget also, Juan David, and I wanted you to give us a few words of what can be done exactly with the AirSwap widget to really empower dApps and token projects really and their users in general.
Yeah, correct. So, I mean, I think one of the reasons that we started to also engage into this initiative is that we see AirSwap not only as a broker where you can go to their website to buy the asset, but as well they do provide value directly for the founders and the token companies, where they can actually use their technology and implement this piece of AirSwap inside their own websites. So early adopters, users that want to actually be part of their dApp, whenever they come directly to the website, can have access to buy and sell their asset for small quantities, even if they want, directly on the website, instead of having to be referred to, for example, please go to HitBTC, or please go to Binance, or please go to KuCoin, or whatever exchange it is. But it's especially if the target is really the user of the dApp, it's a much easier way and lower bar into entry for someone than to go and be asked to create an account in a Chinese exchange.
And to clarify too, so Ricky Thompson in the YouTube comments says, so they provide liquidity to AirSwap, and yeah, so that's correct. So the team of Keyrock, for example, I think Phantom FTM is one, right?
Correct.
So if you were to try to go to the AirSwap Instant right now, if you were to go to AirSwap Instant, you were to say, I want to buy, let's say, 2 ETH worth of FTM. If there are multiple makers, one of those makers that will quickly respond will likely be Keyrock. So yeah, that's when we talk about providing liquidity. That's really what that means, is they're returning when you ask for an order, when you go to take an order. That's somebody like Keyrock on the on the back end of that.
Yeah, exactly. And Juan, I wanted to thank you a lot for, in general, I think with a mix of great UI, UX and great liquidity servicing that you're providing, we're really empowering tokens and people in the ecosystem in general to really have easy access to liquidity and tokens in general. So I think this is a great initiative. And if you are a token team and you're interested to join the program, I invite you to sign up on the Keyrock websites at any time.
Yeah. Thanks a lot, Max. Thanks a lot, David. And David, I think it's time for you to go home and leave the office.
Don't worry, man. I still have to send some contracts, Yeah, thank you very much, guys. Thank you very much. Have a very good day. Cheers.
Thanks, you too. And next up, we have Michael Oved and Jay, it looks like, and a few other folks here. What's going on, Jay? To talk through TAP, which is something that came out the other day that I think a lot of people I saw on Twitter were talking about. So this should help to, I think, clarify some of the discussion around the Fluidity TAP model that was released, and I think be pretty interesting for a number of folks.
Yeah, thanks, Rob. So hey, everyone. I'm Jay from the marketing team here at AirSwap. As probably everyone that's been up earlier has alluded to, we have been doing a lot of work on top of product, but also have been doing a lot of developer work. And so in sync with that, we have launched our developers Discord, and I've posted that in the chat. So if everyone who's interested can join, interact with the team members directly, and we'll have a lot more initiatives on the marketing and community side to bolster our our initiatives. And up next is Oved, Mark, and Greg.
Thanks a lot, Jay.
Hey, Bobby.
What's going on, Oved?
So, Michael, co-founder CEO of Fluidity. We at Fluidity have been shipping pretty incredible amount of products on the AirSwap side, and also kind of moving up the stack into some other different product offerings. So, obviously the AirSwap, we're focusing a lot on protocols, building new products on top of that protocol, on top of those protocols, opening the system up to allowing more developer experience. We're going to be focusing on traders, makers, and making a big integration push pretty soon. And also, more recently, we focused on the TAP, the tokenized asset portfolio, with the MakerDAO team. And we're trying to present a new mechanism and pilot to pledge real world assets to CDPs.
Awesome. Maybe we could just get into, exactly what the, what TAP is for those who are unfamiliar, and kind of why it might be useful, and what the team is trying to accomplish there.
Yeah, so this is Mark. I'm on the product team at Fluidity. So one of the larger missions of Fluidity is to bridge the gap between traditional capital markets and decentralized finance. And so we launched TAP as a solution to bridging that gap. So what TAP attempted to achieve, and what we proved through TAP, was that if traditional capital markets participants had real assets that they wanted to use within the DeFi system, there wasn't really a way to do that. And through TAP, we identified a pathway for them to do that. The way, if you read the white paper, it works is that as a capital markets participant, you can use your real world assets in a decentralized source of capital through creation of a portfolio that actually holds those assets. What we did is, when we created a portfolio that holds those assets, we then created a tokenized version of those assets for that portfolio. And then we used that tokenized version of the portfolio as collateral within a decentralized system of credit. We were able to do that because we also built a system of oracles that provided pricing information and also attestation that the underlying assets were actually owned within the portfolio. So when we pledged that tokenized version of the portfolio as collateral within the decentralized system of credit, they were actually be able to value it and also prove that the collateral was owned by the entity that was putting it as collateral in the system. When that was accomplished, we were then able to draw down credit from the decentralized system of credit and use that as you normally would if you were using a blockchain native asset as collateral. So this really was the first time where real world assets were able to be utilized within this decentralized finance and able to use to draw down loans from a blockchain-based system of credit.
Got it. And one of the things I've talked about on my channel before has been MakerDAO and CDPs, and I even did a demo of those a while ago. And this interacts with the MakerDAO system in specific. And Greg, you being on the MakerDAO team, would love to get a little bit of just detail on how this kind of interacts with the MakerDAO system, and why this pilot was important, especially for people that maybe aren't so familiar with just kind of how this all works.
Yeah. So first of all, I'm Greg. I'm the head of business development at the Maker Foundation, and thank you for having me, guys. It's we think it's really great to see teams like Fluidity take the initiative to proactively enter our system, especially before it's even launched. For those who are not too familiar with what Maker's been up to, we've been live for almost 2 years now with our beta product, Single Collateral DAI. We call it single collateral because you can only generate DAI against Ether. Now, moving forward, we're going to be launching multi-collateral DAI. And this is where you can generate DAI versus pretty much any asset. And we think that a lot of those assets will ultimately be security tokens, much like the token that Fluidity generated with their TAP experiment. So, to that end, we think that the only way the MakerDAO system can really scale is to bridge real world assets into the system. And, this was a great first initiative to show how to do that.
Where, as we kind of look towards the future, this was a, somewhat of like a pilot kind of program or a pilot test. Oved, Mark, Greg, where do you feel like this could potentially, like, what's the potential of this type of tool in the future? What's the potential of TAP in the future, outside of the pilot program itself?
Well, maybe you could take that for the business perspective, and then I'll take it for why it's important to our ecosystem.
Yeah, well, you can definitely compete on rates. So things in the decentralized finance ecosystem might have different interest rates than the traditional finance ecosystem. And also, MakerDAO essentially acts as a decentralized central bank, which allows any sort of asset, in theory, to be pledged as collateral towards a loan. And so the central bank actually only can service banks itself. And this actually allows you to open up the financial system to many more types of participants and many more types of assets. So you can think that someone can be able to take a loan in Indonesia that they wouldn't have been able to take otherwise because the money market system in Indonesia is pretty much inaccessible.
Got it.
And tactically, the way that we're thinking about this is, I think the plan is that MCD will be live in the fall. So through our pilot, we actually tested that we can use US Treasuries as a type of collateral. We think that when MCD is live, we want to launch the TAP and a form of collateral as part of that initial launch and try to scale into DeFi in that way, specifically starting with the MakerDAO system, but potentially leveraging the TAP across the entire DeFi landscape.
Yeah, and you have to think that finance is just absolutely massive. And this, even though we're seeing really nice growth in the DeFi ecosystem, there's still so much more that it can grow. And we think that this is really going to help unlock the potential of DeFi, allowing it to actually touch the real world in a real way.
Yes. So to give...
You got it, Greg. I was just going to say, as far as how this relates to the MakerDAO ecosystem, would love how it kind of adds that level of stability you were talking about previously.
Yeah, so when you think about the core product that MakerDAO produces, it's a stablecoin, meaning that our core service is stability. Now, to produce stability, we have this seemingly complex mechanism, but it's not that complicated. It's really just taking the existing banking infrastructure and superimposing it onto a blockchain. So to do that, you have credit demand, and that is generated through CDPs, and then you have stability seekers. These are the people that want to hold DAI. And we have another market like Compound that shows you these really organic rates that people are willing to pay to hold DAI. Now, right now, the balancing act, if you've looked at the stability of DAI since our inception, there's been a couple minor bumps because it's very, very difficult to balance supply when you don't have the kind of assets in the system that could very easily influence the supply of DAI. So for instance, the treasuries, they are the perfect asset because treasuries are effectively a risk-free interest-bearing US dollar. So when you enter that into the system, if your stability fee is higher than the rate you're making on the treasuries, you are immediately going to start closing all your CDPs because you're not making a profit anymore. But the moment that the stability fee goes below the rate on your treasuries, then, and by the way, when I say stability fee, I don't mean the system-wide stability fee. I mean the specific stability fee for TAP tokens on treasuries. So, and by the way, I can't speak for the maker holders. I don't know what assets will enter into the system. I'm just saying personally, I think treasuries are going to be a very important component because since DAI is soft pegged to the dollar and treasuries are effectively a risk-free interest-bearing dollar, they're going to be the quickest way to close that supply and demand gap when DAI is having variations above or below a dollar.
That's I think it's a really interesting approach, and I think as somebody that, and I know a lot of the viewers on this also pay attention to it, but somebody that's kind of just kept track of the ecosystem with DAI and has CDPs on my own, seeing how traditional finance can kind of be morphed and kind of absorbed a little bit into the ecosystem to add stability. to this like decentralized finance space, I think is really pretty fascinating stuff. Outside of that, guys, is there anything I missed on the aspect of Tap and what you're planning to do here?
No, generally, we're just using this as our first step into creating this connectivity between traditional markets and DeFi. We'd look to start potentially with treasuries and then add more collateral types into the system as we expand. And then we'll just be looking for other use cases outside of potentially just credit that we can get traditional capital markets institutions involved. Something that we've always talked about with regard to both Fluidity and AirSwap and our trading expertise is the ability to support trading of security tokens. So we'll be keeping a close eye into the adoption of several different types of security tokens in the space and see if we can start supporting high volume trading for those as it builds.
Subject to compliance, of course.
Well, I really appreciate the time, everybody. A lot of good questions in the YouTube chat, and also for everybody watching on the AirSwap Periscope Twitter channel as well. So I hope everybody enjoyed this episode of AirSwap Next, and thank you to everybody, the entire team that shared all the different aspects from the technical kind of protocol level stuff to the new product, the AirSwap Trader, and some of the other components of it. Would love just feedback continued in the on Twitter and in the YouTube comments as well, and looking forward to hearing feedback from people that ended up trying out a lot of these new updates. Thanks a lot for the time, Oved, Greg, Mark. Hope you guys have a good one.
Bobby.
Thank you, Bobby.